Okay, we will get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Stacy King, and I'm your guest host for today's presentation. I want to first welcome our speakers for today. First up is Chris Cline with Agents Council for Technology. Chris is the executive director, which is a program of the Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers of America. Prior to his current role, Chris spent 28 years at Westfield Insurance, with his most recent role as National Agency Distribution Leader, directing the agency lifecycle management and overseeing existing and emergent agency technology. He was also the host of Closing the Gap, which is a podcast for independent insurance agents. Chris is joined today by Ginny Winkworth, Program Manager for ACT. Prior to Jenny's current role, she was Customer Experience Lead at Merchants Insurance Group and has also served as Senior Personal Lines Underwriter and Business Analyst with Commercial Union One Beacon. Both Chris and Jenny's expertise support ACT's mission of advancing the use of technology for the security of the independent agent distribution channel. And we are excited to have both of them with us today. A few little housekeeping tips first. Please don't forget that if you have a question, put the question in the Q&A and we'll be sure to answer those as we're going. Actually, I believe Jenny will take care of the Q&A. And then if you just want to chat with us, any of the panelists, you can do that in the chat window as well. Both the chat and QA are in your controls. And otherwise, please give a warm welcome to Chris Cline. Welcome, Chris.
Yay. Thanks, Stacy. Really appreciate it and enjoy the opportunity always to catch up and hopefully add some valuable content to the world that can help independent agencies think a little differently about how technology can enable the strategic initiatives they have going in their agency and ultimately continue to thrive. So it's really great to be here and super excited to kind of have this conversation today, and want to give a special thanks to the folks at Agentero for their support of ACT. Really enjoy kind of getting to work with those folks too. So thanks for that. Want to mention again, give Ginny a chance to say hi over there. I don't know how everybody shows up on each person's screen, but really, if you do have questions specific to the content, want this to be as interactive as possible, by all means, use the Q&A button. It's the little dialog box in the bottom of your screen. Ginny will be monitoring that, and if questions come in or if she has questions or whatever, we'll address those as we go through today's presentation. So I'm going to jump in unless there's anything anybody would like to add. Stacy or Ginny, good?
No, awesome. Thanks, Chris. Excited
Awesome.
for the content.
Cool, excellent. So we're going to do this whole share screen thing and hopefully make it work well. And so I'm going to look at Ginny for a thumbs up to give me some kind of scoop that the screen looks like it's supposed to look like. All right.
You're good. Yep, you're good.
Excellent. Well, thank you. So slow down to speed up. What does that mean? Where did it come from? And I'm going to spend the whole day talking about this. And it's a cool phrase. If you look it up online, you can find a lot of different things that are built around this concept and how it can apply to a lot of different parts of life. But for me, it hit me. And I'll tell a story. About a year and a half ago in my prior life, before I joined the Big I, I was on my way home from the Kentucky Big I. They had a leadership conference. It was kind of their version of Young Agents. And so this was around May or so of 2021. And I was one of the speakers, and I had just come off stage and got great opportunity to listen to some of the great speakers in our industry, Jack Wingate, Danny Kimball, Ryan Hanley, and some of the agents that are in Kentucky. So you can imagine the things we were talking about. It was how technology can change the world, and diversity, inclusion, and culture, and APIs, and processes, and efficiency. And so a really cool concept and a lot of great content with some people who have become great friends of mine in the industry. And I did my session and was on my way back home. So I live north of Columbus, Ohio. So I had about a 4.5 hour drive home. And, like most of us do when we leave an industry event, we just reflect on the things we heard. And, whether I'm speaking or attending, as a general audience member, I find a phenomenal amount of value in attending industry events and interacting with others and hearing what thought leaders have to say and networking in the whole 9 yards. So I was just kind of thinking about all the stuff, all the things we talk about. And I'm buzzing through Cincinnati. I don't even know what time of day it was, but I was a couple hours into my trips. I was just in that zone that we've all been on as we make these long drives. And somewhat prophetically now, I guess, if you will, I noticed a billboard. Actually, I don't even know that I noticed the billboard until I was past it. But the billboard is not following the way it's supposed to work here. Hold on 1 second, folks. The screens aren't working. Here we go. All right. Everybody sees a big red car, I think. So is this billboard, and you can fill in the blanks as to what company the billboard was for. I guess that's a little bit far less significant than the message. But the bold headline on the billboard was essentially this: buy a car in as little as 11 minutes. And probably like most of you driving along, you kind of just subconsciously consuming billboards and other media in the whole 9 yards. I was probably listening to a Joe Rogan podcast or something, but it kind of hit me a few minutes later. 11 minutes. 11 minutes. Like who buys a car in 11 minutes? I don't know what circles you roll in, but who can afford to buy a car in 11 minutes? And then it got me thinking a little bit more deeply. Should you be able to buy a car in 11 minutes? Is it even responsible to allow somebody to buy a car in 11 minutes? Whatever, you can think about that on your own. But as I mentioned, I had just come off stage and was listening to some great thought leaders about what's going on in our industry. A lot of this thing really clicked. And so I started to think for the next few hours on the way home about this concept as it relates to our industry. And again, I mentioned prophetically seeing this billboard and the way it kind of triggered some thought, but I was also in a vehicle that I had purchased just a few weeks prior, and it took all day Saturday to buy this darn thing. And so we all have those experiences. And so the light bulb that went off in my mind is, all right, this is clearly marketing. It's hyperbolic in nature. And it was really to get you thinking differently about this company and the experience that they were trying to kind of let you know that you could have, that you could buy a car and you didn't have to spend your entire Saturday at the dealership waiting for all sorts of things to happen. And so, it just was this concept that triggered with me that while our industry's on this journey and we get challenged a lot to talk about this I guess the equivalent of an all-day buying experience, that we can do it in 11 minutes. And somewhere on the continuum is probably really where that resides. But this sort of extreme notion and this shot across the bow that things can be better and quicker, faster, really resonated with me. And, as I continue to think about that, all of us watching today are likely on LinkedIn, we're likely on Twitter and Facebook, wherever we're at, going to industry events where it's, I don't know, it seems like it's a little bit of a sport to take a shot at our industry as to how slow we are and how, I guess, seemingly long it takes us to embrace any sort of technology. And, in this notion of speed, it got me thinking again around the fact that speed in of itself, and I do this, I don't know, from time to time, I love to connect odd, disparate thoughts and things that don't necessarily make sense, but they do help me kind of think through concepts in ways that maybe we would benefit from if we applied different thoughts and learning to. And so when I read something on social media or I hear somebody out there taking a shot at our industry and say, you're too slow, you're not moving fast enough, I started to think about that because it rarely comes with much specificity. And I think it applies really strongly to the notion, the fact that speed is a simple ratio. It's distance over time. And, we all probably went through that and had to do a page of questions on a worksheet when we were in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, something like that. Maybe I'm wrong. It was probably a year slower for me because of how hard it takes for me to kind of get some of this stuff. But, all sincerity, when you think about that, what I want to ask and what I've asked is, when somebody or some entity says we're too slow, I think it's important to stop and say, well, let's stop and think about what it means to be slow or fast. And in order to have any context on that, you have to have a defined distance, or at least a goal and a desired time frame by which you want to achieve that goal. Or I suppose in another context is at least looking in retrospect and saying, I did A, B, or C in X amount of time, or at least you have those variables. You can kind of calculate that and compare it to others. But when our industry, and we get challenged in our industry about we're not moving fast enough, what does that even mean? And I suspect that if we went around the horn in any room full of insurance professionals and ask those questions, what do you mean by we're not moving fast enough? And ask them to prioritize something we should be working on, and how significant that should be, the distance, I guess, if you will, and how quickly we should solve for it, you would get just as many answers as there are people in the room, and maybe even some healthy debate. So it's really kind of valuable to stop and think about that, and not to be over absorbed by the hyperbole in that, but also to not lose sight of the fact that we actually can be quicker than we are. I think we know that. It's just about making sure we're intentional about what that looks like. Because if you kind of use that first example, the 11 minutes versus the all day, that's a perfect example of speed. We know that to buy a car is a goal. It's something you're going to accomplish, and it took 8 hours or 6 hours on a Saturday. And the car retailer that has vending machines along the freeway that we won't mention is basically saying you can do the exact same thing in 11 minutes if you, I don't know, have infinite wealth or are willing to kind of sign away your credit life. So kind of a fascinating concept there, at least to me. And it's just kind of the way I'm formulating some of these thoughts together. So kind of want to work through this again and kind of bring this back to some of the fundamentals of our industry and use some completely different examples to do that, because fundamentals are key. And we'll talk about that a few times through the session today about how important fundamentals are and how this slow down to speed up concept works. And so kind of thinking about the visual even at the front of the slide deck, where a couple cars ripping through a corner, slide and smoke coming from the wheels. They were probably drifting, so they were probably more in control than we think. But I love to use, again, things that don't necessarily seem to align. And so let's start with this picture on the left. And if you were a golfer or a golf fan during the 90s and early 2000s, you undoubtedly know who this person is. His name's Ernie Els. And he's a pretty good sized man. He's 6'3", 6'4", something like that. He was arguably one of the best golfers of his generation, and some might even argue of all time. Multiple major winner, multiple time champion on tour, and just highly regarded for just how accomplished he is as a golfer. But he's known for hitting the ball a long way, while also being a phenomenal striker of the ball. But what's cool about this, and why I love this as an example here, his nickname was the Big Easy. And it wasn't the big flail about, it wasn't stand up the ball with no thought, rhyme, or reason, swing it as hard as you can and hope and pray that it goes where you want it to. It was totally controlled. It was all about fundamentals. He slowed the game down in order to hit the ball farther than other competitors. And in fact, if you Google quotes from Ernie Els, one of the very first ones that shows up every single time you Google it is something to the effect that he found that he scored better, hit the ball better, and hit the ball further when he swung at 80%. So there's something from that I think we can apply to business here and how we think about this through the lens of running our own businesses and every aspect of that. The middle one here is clearly a race car. I spent a lot of time drag racing in my younger days and did a little of the road racing and curvy stuff. But if you follow motorsports again, or if you've, happen to kind of just stumble across any motorsports on TV, whether it's Indy 500 or the Daytona 500, the things that, most casual people would watch, you hear things like, got to hit your marks. And we know this from our, through our own intuition, whether we think about it. If you're taking sort of an exit ramp or a transition from one freeway to another, you don't keep your foot on the gas or your cruise control set at 80 miles an hour and expect to make it through an on-ramp or an exit ramp without wadding yourself up or bouncing off of some other car. So, but the idea here of this slowing down to speed up is really prolific in motorsports. And so they talk about knowing exactly when to brake, knowing when in the corner you start to turn, when you can start to accelerate again off of the corner. And so there's a reason why race cars and sports cars, even those that some of us could buy in 11 minutes from that other company, I suppose, if we wanted to, have really, really sophisticated braking mechanisms, is because braking is as important to going fast as horsepower and acceleration is. And you can ask any motorsports or any race car driver or fan to attest to that, and every single one of them will tell you the truth, unless of course they're drag racing fans, where it's just go as fast as you can possibly go in a straight line. The other one, and perhaps more applicable to us, at least at a sort of a tactical and basic level, if you Google slow down to speed up in business consulting, you will find Deloitte, E&Y, all of those firms that we've all heard of that do global business consulting. Almost all of them have content or something out there immediately on page 1 of Google that references slowing down the speed up. And what this means here is about getting very clear around your plans and your goals and your strategies. You can't just, like we talked about with Ernie, you can't just get up there and flail as hard as you can and hope good things happen. To be very intentional, and sometimes that takes slowing down. That's why large businesses take time to plan. They write a strategy. They figure out what tactics it takes to get there. They put goals and measures in place that help sort of allow them to understand whether they're on track to their strategy. And they put key metrics in place and budgets and the whole 9 yards, and they continue to iterate on that and stay focused. And so it's not uncommon in any strategy session to hear commentary around the fact that you got to pick 3 or 4 things and get good at them. You can't be good at everything. It's not everything can be an A. Sometimes you got to be a B, and sometimes you have to make significant trade-offs. So I think in the spirit of fundamentals, whether you're a golfer, whether you're a race car driver, or like most of us, you're in the business world, just being really true to your fundamentals and very focused on the things that matter, and doing so with control allows for better overall results, whether it's, again, winning majors or Indy 500s, or like the rest of us, running a business. But I want to focus on this fundamentals thing, because this comes back to what's going on in our industry here. And this concept of a polarity is fascinating to me. And it's not something that I've really been exposed to for a very long time. Although when you hear it explained, you'll realize that we've all lived in a world of polarity. And this concept of a polarity, again, was exposed to me in my prior life. And you start to talk about it in terms of how do you lead a business? How do you lean into things and make really effective strategic decisions? Do this sometimes, through this scenario where things sometimes compete, and they make you want to think about it through an either or an or. Well, our industry is not at all immune from this. And so, in fact, I think our industry is a phenomenal case study here. And so when you think about what the kind of the bookends of this polarity in our world, right? We've all had these concepts, whether we've grown up on the carrier side or an agent, or any of the organizations that support agents and carriers working together. But we're built about incredibly sound fundamentals that involved making key underwriting decisions and understanding risk. Are we getting the adequate price we need for each individual exposure? When we talk about claims handling, we're talking about honoring the contracts that we've put in place with our policyholders. We all know this thing. We're highly regulated. We're 50 state regulated, which is an exponential complexity to this type of thing. We're continually trying to understand what the appetites are and how do we make sure that we're kind of working in a unique way. And we love to say that we're a relationship business. So those things all in themselves are great. But on the other side of the polarity matrix here, the rest of the world's out there talking about open APIs and direct integration and third-party data and pre-fill and all of these things about becoming more efficient and working directly with consumers. And can you answer things that used to take 70 questions or 10 questions and get them down to 1? And so how do these things reconcile becomes really hard. And our industry is trying to put these together in a way that does not treat them as an either or, but rather as an and. And it's kind of hard to think about. And again, I mentioned one of the ones that is most common is profitable growth, right? And for as long as I've been in the business, which is nearly 30 years, profitability, when I talk about earned incurred loss ratio, and significant organic growth, when those exist together, it's usually not for very long. We seem to be ebbing and flowing through these cycles, or we're really going to grow, and then eventually we start to lose money and we have to self-correct, become profitable again, and growth becomes a challenge. And that's what creates hard and soft market cycles. So it's a fascinating concept to think about when you're making business decisions.
Chris, I don't mean to interrupt you, but just this whole concept, I'm wondering if you have like any specific examples maybe that you can share, because I'm trying to, I guess, get my head around the concept. So is there like an industry example maybe that you can share about how sort of the fundamentals and the opportunities were reconciled in some way?
Yeah. What's fascinating is when you look back over the trajectory of this example I'll give, it's happened just long enough ago that I don't know that all of us would look at it as being as radical now as it was when we were going through it. But I think about the claims intake process, or first notice of loss, as kind of the framework there that I've learned, FNOL. It really was not that many years ago where you just take the typical personal auto consumer who hit a deer on a Saturday evening. They had to wait until Monday morning to call their agent in order to at least just say, hey, I hit a deer and my car isn't functional, right? Maybe they got it towed. But they needed to wait until open business hours on Monday. And then maybe I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, but then the agent would need to sort of download an Accord claims form and fill it out, and fax it or email it into the carrier, and wait for it to get into a queue. Then a carrier signed an adjuster. Then the adjuster got around to their workload and calling the customer and starting the process to get them in a rental car, and to start to align getting them to a body shop. So that could take days, easily could take days, especially if the claim happened on a weekend. And so, we started to iterate on that as an industry and take these, how do we make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do? We're acting in good faith. We're interpreting coverage effectively in the whole 9 yards. And the industry started to focus on how technology can enable the first notice of loss process. And now, almost at any time via an app, a customer can, especially if they hit a deer, not a super complex claim, or they're involved in a small fender bender in a parking lot, they can either call their agent online, text their agent, or they can go straight into a carrier or an agency app, and trigger the loss. In some cases now, even more robustly, they can take a photograph of the car, and AI estimates the loss based on your make and model and what it can tell from the photograph. And, if that would have happened on a Friday or Saturday night a few years ago versus now, by the time the agent comes into the office in the morning, the loss is being adjusted. The agent knows what happened. They can still have a very, very active role in managing the relationship and making sure the customer has clarity. But now we're taking days and not only just we're really reducing days to a single day, if not hours, and we're offering greater service to the consumer via technology and still allowing us to be compliant. But I know when that started to occur, agents questioned whether or not this would ultimately lead to other disintermediation and what value would they have. And coaching a customer through a claim was something that was, and still is, very near and dear to many agents' hearts, and should be. That is the value and data that we have that we don't even have time to talk about today continues to support that. But it's also an opportunity for us to leverage technology and let the technology solve for problems, get the customer taken care of, and let the human being be the human being when it's time to take care of a customer. So all of that, it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. It's not an excuse not to change. But part of this is this is a complex business. We just talked about it. We're not manufacturing widgets. And so I don't know, wherever I'm at, I usually try to hold something up, a clicker, or this is a remote control to my Fire Stick, which I promise the TV is off if anybody cares. But Friends reruns on TBS all afternoon, at least at the time this is being recorded. But in all sincerity, right, automation can make this thing, and automation and technology and creative thinkers are always trying to look for ways to make this more user-friendly. They're trying to figure out a way to make the buttons more effective, at a more cost-effective way. And when they figure out a way to make these buttons in a more cost-effective way, package them in the thing, they can apply that that technological advancement or that efficiency gain or that cost reduction gain, they can apply it really without variable to every one of these remotes. What makes our industry different is that's not the case, because every single customer you serve, that every carrier serves, and really every company and agent that we interact with is different. There's a lot of variabilities that come into this. And so it really is sort of not an excuse necessarily, but it's a recognition that despite the fact there's all this technology, trying to put this in a spot in a world where every single customer presents a slightly different risk profile and a slightly different set of needs, and then every agency even differentiates themselves in a unique way. And so, when you start to think about what the automation is ultimately trying to drive, especially top of the funnel, the quoting and underwriting and even the bind stuff today, I kind of like overly simplify it. It's how can we, with as few questions, the least amount of gathered data, and as quickly as possible, at least from the insurer and maybe even from the agent's point of view, we're making $1 million bet every time we do that. So it's how can we, with the least amount of effort, understand as much about Ginny in this case to put $1 million of our capital on the table to wager that she knows how to drive her car. I mean, it's kind of as simple as that. And then the fact that no two people on the planet represent the exact same auto insurance risk that Ginny does. Most of them are nowhere near as good of an auto insurance risk, I'm sure, as Ginny. But it's a kind of a fascinating thing, to think about there.
So Chris, the excuse part. So somebody kind of asked that without trying to be like flippant about it.
Sure.
I think they're saying it does sort of sound like an excuse, right, to move slow. But I mean, I don't know. Can you expand on that like a little bit more?
I can, or at least I will. I don't know if I can or not. I guess the people listening will determine whether I did. But and I'm admittedly going to put a carrier hat on, but I challenge the entire industry to think about this at least for a moment through the lens of a carrier, right? And they're the ones who are ultimately bearing risk, and usually are the ones that take, I don't know, maybe the most glaring shots from outside for not moving fast enough. And when I talk about that $1 million bet, the carriers are the ones that are ultimately bearing that risk. And so they're the ones who will ultimately face public ridicule, and certainly regulatory issues, and probably even legal class action type issues if they're not well funded, if they're not acting in good faith when claims occur. And so making sure that, I guess kind of a sort of inside that is the only reason any of us have jobs, overly simplifying this, is to indemnify a customer following a covered loss. And to be financially capable of doing that requires real discipline, and it requires real thought, and it requires a lot of things to happen appropriately. And so some of the investments, I think, that we get sort of as an industry implicated for not adopting might not be for a lack of want, but they're for a lack of priority. And so, you have to deploy resources in the actuarial process, and deep understanding of risk, and a deep understanding of how to better, price risk. And so I love this analogy too. I wish I could cite the true source, not because I don't want to, but where it came from. But in my prior role, the leader and I that I worked with together, we talked a lot about $1 a premium, and just overly simplifying what $1 a premium is, just to represent 100% combined ratio or whatever it is. But if you collect $1 a premium, and you meaning just the generic industry, a customer pays a premium, immediately the carrier puts about 60 cents of that dollar on a shelf to make sure that they're financially stable to pay a claim when it happens. Because again, that's the only reason we exist. And that's what all the federal and all the regulatory bodies, and really what the court of public opinion wants from us and demands of us, and has really a moral obligation to expect from us. So that remaining 40 cents, think of what it does. It has to pay the salary of every single person that will watch this webinar. pays agents commission, pays their contingencies, it pays underwriters, pays claims adjusters, pays technology providers for the contracts and services they offer to all the above. It pays trade associations. I mean, it's a lot happening out of that 40 cents. When you start to take away the business requirements there, you do get to the spot. This is sort of the punctuation on that statement. There's pennies, if not fractions of pennies left that are truly disposable. And so the industry does an okay job of finding ways, not a phenomenal job. I think we would all say we want to be faster, right? We want to be faster than an all-day car buying experience. But I think we realize that the 11-minute car buying experience is really not where we're going to be. So, hopefully that kind of reacts to the question, Ginny.
Right.
All right. So perfect timing for this slide, although I've used it smack dab in the middle of June and July as well, because I think everybody in the world, especially right now, is watch the movie with this scene. And I love this as just a complete and total analogy for what I fear most agents likely are going through. And I've talked to a number of agencies who have done this. They in good faith want to have the greatest technology, all the coolest stuff. They're on social media and they're reacting to influencers and people who seem to be crushing it, using all the new tools and the shiny objects. And they, in this case, Clark Griswold, he probably drives to, I'm guessing in this area, he drives to Kmart or whatever. And he bought every single thing he could possibly have because he was going to have the coolest, the brightest, and the raddest lighting display his entire community. And as we saw, really the entire Midwest, because it finally worked. All the lights went out across the Midwest. But we all remember this moment. He did everything, thought he did it right. He nearly killed himself. He destroyed his neighbors' homes, almost destroyed his marriage and his family and the whole 9 yards. But when he went to plug it in, nothing worked. And I think that's something there to think about, that there's a lot of that I appreciate, especially agents who would watch this, that there's a lot to be overwhelmed about. There's a lot of things that relate, and the things that are being positioned out there as cool and new and things that will make your agency better and shinier and brighter and, more attractive, to potential customers and your current customers. And it can be really overwhelming, and it's real hard to make those things, work. And so kind of the spirit of this thing is to point out, slow down, don't overly react to FOMO, don't react out of, just fear. Don't react to necessarily one or two agencies online, or somebody who was on stage saying this exact set of tools will make your life easier. And quite candidly, don't let yourself be bullied into decisions that you're not ready for as an agency, or that don't align with your strategy. The reason I mention that is there's a lot of overwhelmingness that comes along with what we've just talked about, and why, again, I just keep reiterating that it's so important to slow down. And I love this slide. I was just able to update it recently. It used to say 36,000 equals 36,000, but now it's 40,000 equals 40,000. And what that means is, quick shout out to our friends here, our other programs at the Big I, but the Universe study was just released, and the best practices and market share data. So phenomenal stuff if you haven't seen it. But there's now 40,000 independent insurance agencies in the US. And what that means is that there's at least 40,000 different opinions and views on how to run one, how to effectively run one. There just isn't a single answer. There isn't a single plan, and there's no set of perfect tools that come along with helping agencies run these things, right? It's kind of the blessing and the curse of our entire industry. This whole notion of being independent has so many upsides, but one of the downsides is that there isn't a carrier or a technology provider or anything that kind of supports our industry that works the exact same and generates the exact same promises to everybody else. I'm gonna grab a drink real quick.
And perfect timing, Chris, because there is a question, just out of curiosity, they're asking the change in the number of independent agents. Any idea what the trends behind that are, what the reason, because it's a pretty short period of time?
Yeah, it is. That's great. And so, for example, the universe study, I believe, is done every 2 years. So 36,000 would have been those numbers in the
Right.
2020 study. We all know what happened from 2020 till now. There was a global pandemic. So some of this stuff feels very counterintuitive. And in fact, as an aside to the question, but I'll comment on that. Independent agency market share actually went up in that period of time in both personal lines and commercial lines. So in a world where some, not all, but some external capital by way of InsurTech basically said agents aren't doing a good enough job and carriers are too slow, get out of the way, we're going to build a better mousetrap. And we combated that and a global pandemic. The independent agency channel not only grew market share, but it grew agency count. So you could kind of get into all the, all the kind of the nuance of the data. But I think it's a good story. So why are there, 4,000 more agents, which is, 10,000 or 10% lift in total count? I think it comes down to two things that are, I think both are pretty pronounced in this trend. And one of them is what we're talking about now. It's just, I think the barrier to entry is pretty low, and a startup now with some of the technology and tools that are out there with the right strategy and the right approach, a startup agency doesn't need to unwind a lot of legacy processes. They don't have to unwind legacy producer compensation models. They can start right now. And rather than maybe investing in commission producers or like in-house service staff, they can invest in SEO and marketing, and they can invest in virtual assistants, and they can use carrier service centers. And so the barrier to entry for a brand new agency is relatively low. And we've seen a lot of startups. In the startup vein, I guess, if you will, there's also a lot of spinoffs. So, another trend that continues to be kind of breaking records every single year is M&A. So agencies buying agencies, and usually it's now the big buyers, defined lists, 15, 20, 25, depending on how where you want to draw the line. But what happens after M&A now, we're really 5, 6, 7 years into this really deep proliferation of acquisitions. And most acquisitions, if you've not been through one, two things tend to occur. A lot of things tend to occur, but a couple that I think feed this are usually the buyers to maximize the EBITDA against a pro forma that they're using to value the agency they're going to buy. First thing one of the first levers they pull is producer compensation. So most producers, if they're doing pretty well, don't like to have their compensation cut. So once they live out their non-compete or their non-solicit, they might go someplace else and start their own agency, and kind of leveraging some of the tools. The other one we see too, it's less common just because there are just fewer agency owners, but agency owners are selling now because values that are an all-time high, and they continue to become phenomenal. So it's an understandable decision. But if you own your own business, and maybe it's a family-owned business, and now it's been around for generations, but it's becoming common, and it's not something that we love to say a lot on stage, but it's real. If you own a business and you sell it, you have a 2, 3, 4 year earn out. Stick around, make sure the results stay the same, help the transition. But that also means you become an employee with a boss. And we have seen a number of scenarios where the agency principal who sold went through their earn out, probably got the double payout, and got the lift on the earn out results, and then kind of said, hey, I'm going to go start over. So two big drivers there, I think, that kind of fuel that. And I think support the trending around the numbers we saw around M&A and spinoffs and startups, because 20% of the agencies that exist now are new since 2016, according to the data. So why? Kind of putting some heft behind this thing. Most people have read or are familiar with Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. And it kind of ties us back to this slowing down and being very clear about your why, especially if you're a business owner, if you're an agency owner, and you're thinking about what this looks like. And when you start to apply or want to start thinking about how technology can enable your business, again, remembering that technology, maybe not remembering, but understanding that technology in of itself is not a strategy. As an aside, personal narrative, when somebody says they want to be a digital agency, my mind goes, I don't even know what that means. There have been digital agencies for decades. It's just now that digital's a buzzword. I start 20 some years ago, I was a field rep where I ran around and delivered computer disks with rates on them. I mean, we've been using automation and tools in different ways over time. But so to say you want to be a digital agency is cool, but what strategy does that support? And so this whole why thing is really important to come back to. And Ginny and I worked really for a few months with one of our work groups at ACT to put together 7 steps for choosing technology for your agency. And there's a lot of this baked into those places. So I don't know if Ginny can put that in the chat or the Q&A for everybody out there. At the very least, just a full-blown commercial to go check out ACT. It's getting some pretty good reviews. But the spirit of this is you got to know what kind of customers you want to attract. Are you a personal lines? Are you commercial lines? Do you want to be an affluent personal lines carrier or an agency, or do you want to write SR22s all day long? Both strategies, and agency owners are doing very, very well in either one. What geography do you want to serve? You want to serve a few counties around, where your agency is, or do you want to sell minimum premium BOPs in 48 states? What kind of employees do you want to attract? What kind of experience do you want your employees to have? Are you going to work at home? Are you going to work everywhere? You're going to have everybody in an office. And then just what is the brand differentiation or the way that you choose to have your agency show up in the marketplace? All of these things are part of the why. And again, none of those 40,000 agencies that are out there today have the exact same bullet points underneath all of those same questions, and would have then, as a result, a slightly different set of tools to get you from where you are today to get you to where you would want to be with this overall why that you're out there. So also slowing down here too, because my screen actually popped up for this question. I'm going to see if I can read it, or Ginny, did you grab it? Or is that?
Nope, that's just me putting the 7 steps into
perfect.
the chat.
Okay.
So just so everybody knows that. So
Gotcha.
It's easy though, for those obviously who hopefully will be watching this on a recording, just independentagent.com/act/steps-to-better-tech.com. So, or truthfully, just go to ACT's website, independentagent.com/act. It's right on the homepage, along with some other great resources, shameless plug, for things that we have to offer. So
no, it's good.
Sorry,
it's just
sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, it's all right. Because it is a lot of the why that we go through there. And it's about talking about involving your employees and being very clear and transparent about what you're trying to accomplish with your agency. And getting really, again, transparent's a word we use a lot, but involving your staff to understand what's working well, what's not working well, and the tools that you have at your disposal already, and are you maximizing them? And then aligning all of that stuff through this, what strategic why your business has, so that you can take an inventory of what capabilities you need versus those that you have, and make technology decisions that now are aligned with what you want to accomplish rather than what looks cool, on the internet. And I guess as an aside here, I've been asked in another session or two on this, what about risk taking? None of this is to say that there shouldn't be calculated risk taking in any business, because you don't know what you don't know. But I think, again, getting very clear on your why and what you're trying to accomplish here will allow risk taking to be calculated. And or if you learn about a new technology or a new capability or some new market or resource that's available out there, it could pivot your why, or it could be supplemental or additional to your why. But at least starting with your why, as Simon Sinek says, when you do experiment or you do get exposed to things you didn't know about, and you want to try to figure out how to leverage them to increase your capabilities and your ability to grow, at least you'll know, or at least have a better idea about how they bolt together, or at least how they Velcro together with what you're already doing as a business. So we're promised we're winding down here, but I would be remiss. This is one of my favorite visuals. It's super simple. And this is, like MBA courses are built around this, and some of the largest global consulting firms on the planet do engagements with Fortune 500 firms around this. But it's this notion of people, process, and technology. And, it could be counterintuitive for the ACT department, the ACT team and program to get up here and say, hey, technology in of itself is at best 1/3 of what is necessary to think about transformative change or effective change in any business, let alone an insurance agency. And so the spirit of this is, and you can see why they're balanced equitably here, is because they do. The people in your organization, and I would argue the people that your organization serves and works with, the processes that support the people, and then the technology that enables both of those things, all have a very balanced approach, and then require, therefore, a balanced amount of effort and intention and focus in an agency for any evolution or even more significant change in an organization to occur. And so it's something that I think in a world, we live in this world. I thought I was going to get through this whole, 45 minutes without saying insurtech, but in the insurtech world, the people selling products, and we are partners with a number of insurtechs who I think have noble intent when they talk about this with their customers, but some don't. They want to sell a product to you. And so if you're not interacting with them and understanding how your processes will be impacted, those that can go away, those that needs to be changed, net new processes your organization might need, and then the ultimate impacts to your team, so your team can be engaged, understand all of the journey and how they're supposed to do their job differently. No technology has, that's sort of an extreme example. Technology installations in of themselves have a much less chance of success without a focus on people and process than they do with.
So actually, Chris, that somebody is asking a question about an example basically of that exact same thing. So an example where an agency invested in a technology that didn't work because it didn't balance people or process, or or both.
So yeah, and I will absolutely leave the state and agency name out. So Stacy, if I say one of them by accident, please, I guess edit it for the future use. But it was my carrier days. I'll also leave the vendor or partner out as well. But an agency, I would maybe stop short of calling them a county seat type agency, but you can kind of envision what I talked about then. Main Street type agency, pretty decent size, had gone through a transition in ownership, kind of a generational transition, and was eager to roll up their sleeves and kind of do cool stuff and grow exponentially in markets they weren't in yet, deeper penetration in further counties and other parts of the state. Pretty aspirational goal, happens all the time. Not aspirational, admirable goal. What they did was they subscribed to a number of digital lead sources. And tapped into carrier co-op dollars to fund it, in terms of, return expectations, hopefully for better growth in the whole 9 yards. Well, after 6 months, the agency owner has a conversation with that person, and these leads stink. This company's horrible. They sold me a bill of goods. I'm not even getting any leads. All of the kind of things that you might have heard. And one of those partners that they had engaged had a relationship with in my prior life, and we got reports. So I was able to kind of say, look, that may be 100% true. You might not be getting any, or what you get might stink. But I'm looking at this report that says you got X number of these things, over this period of time. And this person, data can trump emotion at times, and it elicited this conversation. Anyways, a long story, super compressed, Buzz. Nobody in the agency knew that the leads were bought. Even though, the question was, well, who in the company is getting those leads? Well, it's John or Jane Doe. Well, why are they getting it? Well, that's the name you put into the form when you filled out the subscription and gave the email address. So does John or Jane know that they're supposed to do something with those? Is it a delete? These are online digital leads, so there's probably a different set of customer expectations. So what happened was they didn't communicate that they'd made the technology investment. They didn't create clarity for anybody in their organization that they're getting these and that they come with a different set of expectations, follow-up timing, and a set of processes to do it so that you could, a person in the agency would get the lead and say, hey, call somebody back in 30 minutes or whatever those types of things were. So noble intent, want to grow your agency, want to expand your footprint, do the whole thing, work with a different class of people, buy leads. Didn't do anything with the process or the people to give that any chance to success. So over time, the agency pulled a certain staff member aside, said, you're going to be 100% accountable for our digital lead generation programs. And they started to work on how to get it in that person's inbox quickly and how to set expectations for their job in terms of follow-up time and close rates and those types of things. And then a bonus structure that changed for that type of role and the success from the online lead generation tool. Eventually, kind of got back to be more in line with what they'd hoped from. So it's a very real example of an agency doing something that a lot of agencies think about is buying leads, but not necessarily thinking about who's going to do what with those leads and how once they're in the agency, especially if there's a number of them. So let's do this. So, right? With a lot of thought, slowing down, getting things together, making sure everything's plugged in correctly, and engaging some help. In this case, Clark, I think his wife kind of figured out that not only did you not put any rhyme or reason into this thing, you didn't even plug it into the right receptacle and make sure all the stuff was turned on correctly. So kind of the spirit of this slide here at the end, it's very perfect around the holidays, but with some thought and some planning and some care and some help, you can make this stuff work just by kind of slowing down before you speed up.
I really appreciate it. It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, it's sometimes you get asked to come in and talk about what's the perfect tech stack or what 3 technology companies should I have my eyes on. But to me, we can talk about that, but let's talk about it with some context. Like, what are you trying to solve for and those types of things? And again, what may be perfect for you might not be perfect for Ginny.
Right. And also in this industry, people tend to have the, squirrel. They just keep looking at all the stuff and going, ooh, I want to try this and I want to try that and I want to try this. And you do have to focus because, as you say, if you don't focus, then you're just kind of, throwing darts and hoping that something sticks.
And to this day, I still don't know anybody who's bought or sold a car out of the company whose billboard triggered this whole concept. So maybe you do.
Yeah, never know. But I want to thank you both again for just coming on. You guys always have such wonderful insights and experience and stories that really relate and help people understand why you say the things that you do. Also, Ginny, thank you for monitoring the Q&A, and we really appreciate you all taking the time to share your knowledge. It means a lot to us as well as the current attendees and the future attendees on the on-demand.
Well, we greatly appreciate the opportunity, Stacy. Truthfully, we talk about all the knowledge and information and resources ACT has, and all we want to do is share. We want to reach. So this is great. So thanks for the opportunity to do that.
You're quite welcome. And for any of you out there that may have any additional questions, we'll make sure that you guys have their contact information. And again, if you want to go to the website where the information was that Ginny mentioned, it is www.independentagentt/ACT/steps-to-better-tech.com. And
or just stop at the ACT and you'll get to our homepage. So that's fine.
Yeah.
And quick questions, ACT at iiaba.net. iiaba.net. Yep. And we'll answer any questions you have.
I say we're both pretty active on LinkedIn, as is the ACT page.
Absolutely.
LinkedIn as well. So we try to dole out our stuff as well.
be sure to connect with both Chris and with Jenny on, on LinkedIn. And that way you'll always be in the know on what Act's got coming up. I know you guys have your own conference and several different events throughout the year, and as well webinars throughout the year. So you can always find out what's new and next. And for any of you that have questions regarding the Agentero platform or the markets that Agentero can provide, please just feel free to send an email to sales@agentero.com. There, the sales team will be sure to reach out and answer any questions that you might have. And we'll be happy to assist you. And from me, Stacey King, I appreciate you all being here, and I truly enjoy hosting these. And thank you all for attending today. Please stay tuned. Our next one is coming up in January, and we hope that you'll register for that one as well. Thanks.
Thanks.